This time on Rad Rat Video, we finally settled the debate once and for all. Is there a trick called Frontside Overcrook? Let's do it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel about skateboarding where I talk about all different kinds of things in the skateboarding world, reviewing old games, answering your questions, talking about skateboarding history. These questions all came from my website, radratvideo.com. You can submit your own there as well. First one is from the YouTubist, who has a couple of trick questions I'm just gonna go through pretty quick. First question is, if you did a pop shove it into a tail slide, does it count as a tail slide because your back foot is on it, or does it count as a nose slide because the nose of the board is on it? It's tail slide. The direction of your board doesn't matter. If you do a trick with the board backwards, it's not like it changes what trick it is, you know? So yeah, definitely it's a pop shove it tail slide. So, you know, if here's the ledge, pop shove it tail slide, it's a tail slide even though it's the nose. The second question is if you can do a shove it and a body varial at the same time. And he said, I've been debating with a skate colleague, as my girlfriend calls the homies. You're 37, bro. You're not that old yet. You can say homies. So can you do a shove it and a body varial in the same direction? And does that count as its own thing? It doesn't count as its own thing. It's just like a weird no-footed version of a spin, whether it's a 180, front side, backside, half cab, whatever. It's, yeah, like there's a lot of different technique stuff. You could do, if you were to do a big spin flip, you could do a 360 flip and like twist your feet around at the last second and it would still be a big spin flip. It would just look kind of weird. Or you can spin with it and catch it in the air and pull it around the rest of the way. That's just a style thing. That's not like a different trick. The only way it would be a different trick, and I have seen this before, although I think it was with a hard flip. A person does a hard flip, catches it, and then kind of pushes the board down and switches feet. So it's like, it's a front side flip because his body and board both spun front side and the board kick flipped, but it was a hard flip and then he spun afterward. So if you were to do something like that, sure. But I think what you're talking about is just a sloppy, ugly looking 180. And I'm sorry because I feel like you may have been on the wrong side on that one. Next question is from Adam T, who says, what's the origin of your logo? Did you make it yourself? What about the intro animation? So my logo, I have not figured out a way to mount it on this foam yet. I usually have this in the background. Yeah, I designed this when I was working on my brand for my company. This was not intended to be for YouTube, although that's the only thing I use it for now. It was meant to look old school, like, you know, from the 80s, because it's rad. So like it has to be like rad, you know? So it's just kind of an 80s looking thing. It's something I did. I have worked in branding before. My last job before I went self-employed was working at a branding place. So having a brand, like what fonts you use and what colors you use and, you know, what voice you use and the theme, all that type of stuff is important as far as branding is concerned. And so I wanted to have everything look kind of like the 80s to a degree, but with the specific colors I picked and not like generic 80s type colors. So that's where that came from. I did do all of the intros. I have a lot of experience doing like cartoon graphics and animation and stuff like that. So I've made those. If you watch my physics videos, I'll put one here. Maybe the biggest drop. I don't know. I did a lot of stuff like that for it, and like graphics and making the little guy jump off a building and land in a ramp and stuff like that. I think that's a lot of fun. But at this point in my life, I never have time to just do it. But if I can do it for a YouTube video, then I feel like I'm accomplishing something, and it's okay to spend hours like making a little guy, you know, do stuff. If you follow my Instagram, I do every now and then. It's been a while. I think they're saved in the saved stories though. I have like a flip book app on my tablet, and I can draw, and I've drawn, you know, like a guy doing a trick on a ledge, like a nollie back heel into a switch crook or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, that's just something I like to do. And that's what I wanted to do for a career, but like, where's that job, you know? Next question is from the Ballin Swagmaster Junies, who says, do you ever feel overly protective of skateboarding? I find it kind of cringe when I watch a non-skater play a skateboarding game and try to review it. It's like they don't focus on the right stuff or know what's important in a skating game. When I talk to someone who doesn't skate about skating, they just bring up Tony Hawk or something and it kills my vibe completely. That was like the main thesis of my channel to start. One of the first things I did, I reviewed, well, I didn't want to start with the big games. I wanted to get some practice. I should have practiced a lot longer before I handled like Tony Hawk 2. I did that way too early. My videos were still terrible at that point. But I think I did, it wasn't Grind Session, it was Skate, forget the name, Street Skaters with an 8 for the PlayStation. I think that's one of the first things I did on this channel. And the whole point was like, there's no skater centered reviews of stuff. Nobody's talking about how the tricks all look wrong. You know, no one knows about that stuff. Your generic video game reviewer knows if the game feels good, but stuff that would bother me in a game wouldn't bother that guy. So like, you as a skater don't know in advance really how good the game is. You only, you know, because you're going to be more sensitive to certain things. And I think one of the big topics I wanted to talk about, something that was in my head for a long time, was the idea of how Tony Hawk ruined hard flip. It was a video I made, and I wish I had waited much longer to make that video because it's really bad. I'm like, have my camera here and I'm reading a script on my screen. It's a poorly done video. But the point of it was like, when I was in high school, I thought a hard flip was a front shove it and a kick flip, which is correct. Everyone else in my school thought that it was like a pop shove it that you popped really hard. And we would debate about that. And like, it's because in the Tony Hawk games, if you do a hard flip, not only does the board go like flip straight back, which some people do it that way, but his back foot actually scoops backside slightly. And so it looks a lot like a pop shove it, but then you can do a pop shove it in the game. But then there's different games that came out, like in Grind Session, you had a front side varial kick flip and a hard flip. And then a front side flip was a separate trick, although you could spin and do a kick flip. So like, I just remember how confusing it was at the time because the games weren't accurate, you know? So like, for me, that was a big point of why I wanted to make the channel in the first place, is to have the skater's perspective on stuff. I'll play, you know, like Shaun White skateboarding. That game was not super popular. You may think, you know, it's only a few bucks. I can bust out the old PlayStation 3 and I can play it. Is it any good? Well, you would probably rather hear it from me, who can say, hey, here's what all the tricks look like. They're mostly accurate, but this inward heel flip looks kind of weird, you know, like something like that. So yeah, I do get protective of it. With Skater XL launching recently on Twitter, it was trending for a bit, and people were posting their clips. And I watched the first one. It was a guy pushing Mongo up to some rail, and then he gets onto it and he's like kind of sideways. So it's like, it wasn't even a specific grind. It was like a really crooked board slide, but like he was trying to do a 5-0. So it was just like tipped down, but like this weird board slide, and he slides down it. And it's just like, no, that game doesn't make sense if you don't skate, because you can do all kinds of stuff that doesn't make sense. You as the player have to make the rules of like, I want to do a trick that actually exists and I want it to look like it actually would. But if you just watch other people's random footage, they'll do weird combinations of tricks that don't make sense. They'll push Mongo 99% of the time. I don't know why. And yeah, it's just weird and it gets annoying. But I mean, I'm for people enjoying skateboarding. That could be the first thing. That guy who did the Mongo into the crooked sideways board slide, he might pick up skateboarding because of that. And then, you know, so like I don't hate him for it, you know what I mean? But it makes me kind of uncomfortable. So I definitely get where you're coming from. Okay, last question is from Zach. It says, what are your thoughts on the nose grind versus frontside overcrook debate? To add to that, does anyone ever backside nose grind on rails? I honestly can't remember ever seeing anyone do it. So that's kind of a separate question. I'm sure I've seen it, but I can't really think of one. So here's the argument for why a frontside overcrook doesn't exist. I've talked about this before, but I think my opinion on it has changed a little bit, and it was never in the title, so I can't just like send people to find it when they ask me about it every day. So the argument for it is if you're going to nose grind on a ledge, you just do it straight and it's fine. On a round rail, the trick is easier if you pinch slightly and you're going to turn a little bit forward to see the direction you're going. So like it's just a technique to do the nose grind. You're not specifically doing a separate thing. You're just doing your nose grind in a slightly easier way. Now, that doesn't work backside because although you're getting that slight pinch, you are facing backwards. So you're actually making it harder. You know, it's not easier. If you're going to make it easier, you would do a crooked grind. But that's the thing, like crooked grinds exist. So if that's an easier version of a backside nose grind in a way, then why isn't a frontside overcrook the easiest version, an easier version of a frontside nose grind? Like why does it only exist one way? You know, to me, it's like the word funner. Like everyone knows what that means, and there's no reason why it wouldn't be a word. It doesn't break any rules. There are other rules that, you know, fun and funner, like that makes sense. And if you said it, people would know exactly what you meant, but it also makes you sound kind of dumb because it's not in the dictionary, you know? And so technically you shouldn't be using that word, but why isn't it? You know? So like, I feel like a front overcrook is exactly that. But there was recently a debate on the Barracks on their Instagram. They posted one. I tried to find the post, but it's been a few weeks now, I think. And so it's like 5,000 posts back. I don't even know where to find it. But a guy does a frontside nose grind on a rail in the park. And he is so crooked that if he spun this much more, the wheel would have popped over and it would have been a nose blunt. Like it was as crooked as you could get. If you took a picture of it and called it a backside crooked grind, nobody would doubt it. If you call it a frontside overcrook, hold on. Like that's not okay. You can't say that. No matter how crooked it is, you have to call it a nose grind anyway. And one of the debates, one of the arguments that I saw in the comments in there was that back in the day, old school skate mags, your Transworlds and Thrashers and Big Brother and all that, they would never use the term frontside overcrook. They would always call it a nose grind. And so because of that, that is still the case. Like it's never changed because that's what they used to say. But I've talked about this before. I'll try to find some of these pictures of some of the weird naming conventions that they used back then. Like a hard flip, there was a video or there was a sequence where it's called an inside kick flip. I think there was a backside hard flip, which is the opposite of a hard flip, an inward heel flip. But it was, you know, a hard flip goes this way. This is the backside version of a hard flip, you know? Like it kind of makes sense in some way, and it was published in a magazine. But you got to keep in mind the people working on a magazine are just some people, you know? There's no official body, like a rule body in skateboarding that determines whether things are this way or they're that way. It just doesn't work that way. So because some random guy who got a job to type in the captions, you know, like this, some of them were in ads, some of them were in the magazine. If I remember correctly, I think so. But you could have been like the graphic design intern at a company and just typed something in that nobody caught. And like now it's canon in the skateboarding world. I don't think it works that way, I don't think it has to work that way. So for me, my final answer on it is this. If it's a little bit crooked, it's not a very easy to determine thing. If it's a little bit crooked and it just looks like a technique thing, then I would just call it a nose grind. It's a little bit crooked, but it's just a nose grind. You can do a 5-0 and get a little bit off before you want to start calling it something else, you know, like it's fine. But if it was like the one in this clip where it would have been a nose blunt, if it was one more degree, if it's like he's whipping the tail around and grinding it up like that, I don't think there's any reason you shouldn't call it a frontside overcrook. Like that's clarity. You understand what he's talking about. If I say, hey, this guy did a nose grind on the rail, you might picture it slightly turned forward, but you would never have pictured the thing that I saw, you know? And so, yeah, to me, if it just, there's a higher bar for it because of the technique issue, but at some point you can't deny if it's pinched all the way, sliding on one wheel, you know, and like the board's way out here and he's grinding this way, to call that a nose grind is like kind of putting your head in the sand. Like, I refuse to acknowledge the thing I'm seeing. At some point, you just have to admit that it exists. It may not be in the dictionary, but the dictionary is written by an intern at Thrasher in 1992. So that's my thought on that. The frontside overcrook exists, but you just gotta really mean it when you say it. That's my thought on that. So anyway, that's I think this is gonna be the last time I talk about this. So hopefully you'll find this video in the future in 2024 when you have this question. This will still come up when you search for it. But yeah, that's it for now. If you have questions, go to radratvideo.com and submit them there. You can also go to Patreon and submit them that way. I will definitely answer you either in a message or on camera, depending on the question. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching.